Well, good afternoon or good evening, everybody. Welcome to the incoming freshman orientation for the freshman South Lake Carroll Dragon baseball program. I'm Tim Wright. I'll be moderating here with Coach Larry Vucan. Larry, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. Great. Excited to be here.
Yeah. So this all started, just so you guys know, we were talking about what's the best way to get everybody together because I was going to Coach saying, gosh, there's still a few questions outstanding and how do we get those answered? He's like, well, let's just get everybody back together. And I thought, gosh, maybe with the end of school, or end of summer, it's a little challenging. So I do a lot of webinars for my business, and this is why we're doing one. So hopefully, there's a little more convenient for all of you to sit in front of your computer at home and listen. Hopefully, we have a lot of players. So if right now you're at your house and your son is playing video games, maybe have him come off the video games for 30 minutes and listen to what Coach has to say, because it's some really good stuff. So, today's webinar, probably 30 to 40 minutes tops. We are recording it. I've already had a couple people that are out of town or they just can't get back to their house by 7 o'clock. So we are recording it, and we'll send that out in a link that you all can get here by tomorrow sometime. So, today it looks like we got, about 25 people that are on the call. We had about 35 that are registered. You're not going to hold that against them, Coach, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. I don't blame them.
7:05. Are they tardy first game?
Yeah.
First day?
No, they're good.
You won't hold that against them?
I will not.
Just joking. All right. Just so you know, I think most of you know me, or I've met you. I've just been deeply involved in South Lake baseball for 11 years. I've coached a club team for the last 5, and I've known Coach Vucan for many years. And in fact, we met each other years ago at a arm care program when you were the assistant, when you were the coach, the varsity pitching coach. And I've adopted that program years ago for our team, and it's been great. So that's a little about me. But tell you what, let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to do is just get into kind of how this agenda was created. You're looking up here, the clever lineup card. The reason that we wanted this, again, is to answer specific questions, not give you a broad brush, hey, this is how it works, but really get into the nitty detail of how all this works. And most of these agenda items came from you. I had sent some emails out saying, hey, what do you want to talk about? So, you're looking at, the fall baseball program, the freshman class, all the things that are on here are really things that you guys wanted to talk about. Today's webinar really is going to be a conversation between Coach and I. We'll just kind of go back and forth, almost podcast style. So get out your notepad, take some notes. We're going to be covering a lot of specific things here, and we'll go ahead and get started. So, Coach, go ahead and kick us off.
Well, kickoff is a football term, but we'll definitely throw that first pitch. And guys, everybody, we're excited, obviously, for the fall season and for the class. I know there's a lot of anxiety and so forth that goes with incoming freshmen, and we want to alleviate some of that, and hopefully education and knowledge goes a long way to doing that. And we're certainly very excited about seeing all the boys coming into the class, and I know parents have tons of questions, and this is a great opportunity, we feel, to answer those questions. So really excited about this, and also excited about the upcoming year.
So last year, obviously, just from a program standpoint, there's 5 teams. Of course, varsity wins two in a row, and you're trying to figure three-peat. Where do you go from here? I mean, do you just kind of forget last year even happened and start fresh every year? What's your thoughts about just the whole program?
Yeah, I think it's a program-based mentality, and so you have to kind of forget. I mean, obviously, we're excited. We don't want to send a message that we forget our kids that achieved such success last year, especially with the majority of them coming back this year for their senior season. But we do. The mentality is, and it's going to be set the first day, and a lot of the kids that are around me know how I am. And so the very first day, they're going to get a video of the state championship, and then we're going to turn it off, and then we're going to tell them it's time to get locked and loaded for the next year, that we have to earn the opportunities that we are going to hopefully get, and then go out there and have some success. So we're transitioning pretty quick.
Are there things you add on based on what happened last year? I mean, you won state, so where do you go from there? What are you looking to build on?
Well, it's a new set of challenges. Every year is a new group of kids, and even with the kids that we have coming back, and when the people that are listening today, the incoming freshman parents are listening, and the kids know that, I mean, that group last year coming into at this time last year, we had 0 starters coming back essentially. And so that was a different type of year where we felt like there was a lot of open spots. We'd have to compete, find out who our competitors were, and we really didn't have answers for that. And so fall had a different sense of urgency to find those answers. We do have a lot of kids coming back this year, but we always tell the kids you're renting a position, you don't ever own a position. And so dynamics change, injuries occur, attitudes, grades, all sorts of different things come into play. And if guys aren't working hard day in and day out, it's just one of those things. A freshman potentially could take their spot. We had a freshman last year that was had a real good opportunity to be a Tuesday, Friday starter on the varsity. And if it wasn't for an injury, he might have been. And so we would have not thought that going in. So there's always opportunities, but this year we have a target on our back, and we're excited about it. And I think it's a great lesson for the incoming freshmen and the freshman parents to see that you just come in there, you love the game, you enjoy it, and you challenge yourself day in and day out, and you be coachable and allow us to get after you a little bit and set the tone. And if you just put your head down and go to work, then good things will happen.
Yeah. So one of the adjustments that a lot of the freshmen have to kind of figure out when they go from club ball or whatever team they were on into freshman high school. Can you just kind of talk about that? Because that's a question I get a lot. What's the big difference they're going to experience when they jump in?
That's a very important question. And I deal with a lot of select coaches, and I love select and travel baseball. I think there's a lot of good ones out there, and I think there's definitely a lot of great coaches, and it has its need. But I will tell you this, there's nothing like playing for your community. There's nothing like playing for your school. There's nothing like playing for the guys that you grow up with playing. And then obviously, there is something special. And most people that I'm talking to, the audience now understand this. But once they get in the halls of high school, and especially into the senior high, you really sense it that there's something about playing for that name on the front of your jersey, and that protect the tradition's real. And so I think we really, really target that it's all about playing for your community, playing for the guy next to you. And that's, I would say, is the distinction between high school baseball and that it's select. Select, you're playing for numbers. You're hoping to get looks in the summer ball from college coaches and get opportunities to go potentially to play area code, perfect game, whatever it happens to be. But high school baseball is about camaraderie. It's about achieving a goal, which is first to have success and get into playoffs, and then to make a run to the playoffs and then represent your team, hopefully in Round Rock.
Yeah, I've coached quite a bit of club ball, and granted, it's not the same feel as a state championship or even a playoff. But when you're in the final game of a tournament and you've made it, you played 6 games to get there, and there's fans and all the people are there and everything like that. It's an exciting thing. But when you compare that to what it's like in go to Marcus and some of those playoff games or Flower Mound, it's a whole different feel. Obviously, they're a different age group, but I mean it's about that camaraderie, that community, that team. And obviously we go to a lot of games and we see that. It's really no comparison. And maybe until you get to college or something like that.
Right. It's definitely special, and that's kind of what we appeal to kids to. And really, we don't have to do a real. It's not a tough job to sell that in this community for sure.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, let's switch gears. And by the way, these agenda items are kind of all in sequential order. So we're going to talk about fall baseball. By the way, everyone should have received a link to register for fall baseball. If you haven't, let us know. But the registration is due August 19th, so it's coming around to $135. That gets you all the games. That gets you a jersey. And tell us this, because I've got this question. It didn't mention what hats do they wear, what pants do they wear, how will that work in the fall?
Absolutely. So what the cost of that, the whole point of it is it's not run through South Lake. This is run through the NTBL, which is the North Texas Baseball League, run by Doug Delaney, who was the former coach at Fossil Ridge High School. And he's run this league for probably 15 years now. And he does it in the fall, and he also does it in the summer. We do our own thing in the summer, but in the fall, it's a great way to get acclimated into seeing other pitching and so forth. And so what it is he charges a certain amount for league fees, which go to umpires that pays that league fee. For each team entered into the league pays for the umpires, and then for whatever fees we have with regard to maintenance, for coverage of coaches being there to make sure that they're monitoring the fields and the facilities properly and so forth. And then what happens in your pay, when you pay your certain amount, you get a jersey, and then we'll ask the kids to wear their white pants, and they're plain white pants with no pinstripe. So that's a big thing, is to make sure they're wearing plain white pants with a green or black belt. If they have both, then based on the jersey that they get, we will be picking that jersey. Then they will, match that belt up. Obviously, coming from this community, most people, if they play baseball, have a green and black belt. And if not, they can communicate with us, and we can find a way to get them that. But so they'll match that up. The jersey will come with their name on the back of it, and will be provided. That's part of your cost into it, to pay for the league fee for the jersey. You will have to pay for the white pants and the belt and the socks. And again, socks can be green or black. Obviously, the socks will match the belt, and the coaches, the dads will talk to you more about that as they organize the teams once we figure out all of the guys that have registered. And then the hat is also part of that. And what it is, it's kind of a trucker hat this year that we're doing differently, and they'll be able to use this all the way through the spring. When they make the club, hopefully they'll all make the club in the spring, and then they'll wear those for practices and not ruin their game caps. And so it'll serve two functions. They can wear it every day in practice. A lot of the incoming freshmen don't have hats. They might have SD hats, which we don't wear, and so they'll be able to wear. It's a trucker mesh backing, and it'll have a green panel, and it'll have the Dragon logo. It's just the generic Dragon logo on the front of it, and so that's what they will wear to the games. And also, if they're in the fall class, they'll wear that to the fall class every day as well.
And so, tell us about the schedule.
Okay, so the schedule, once we figure out all the teams and all the guys that have signed up and the registrants and kind of idea, then I'll start manipulating and looking at, obviously we'll start with pitchers and catchers and decide from there how we can even up the teams. The teams are meant to be even, so you know. They're not weighted based on what we saw if you were at camp or if you were at the practices this summer, or if you played in the hour-and-a-half scrimmage games that we played off the machines, anything like that. It's meant to even out based on arms and catchers. And we're looking probably based on it. We need probably over 15 to 18 guys because it's a 10-inning game. We don't want to ruin arms, especially in the fall. And so what we're going to do is we're not going to pitch a guy more than 20 pitches at a time. I mean, if he's within the batter, we'll give him 25, but 20 to 25 pitches or 1 inning. And that's it. So we're trying to see as many arms as we possibly can. The emphasis is not on winning in the fall league. It is based on camaraderie, on getting used to being the Dragon way, playing with your guys in your community, us being able to observe and watch that, and then be able to see how versatile you are. So the emphasis is, can you play multiple positions? And so you don't get locked into one position. We can watch you play other positions. And if you pitch, you'll get your inning on Saturday. And with the incoming freshmen, you will all play on Saturdays. And what we do, if you're confused on the registration and it says JV on there, well, what we do, because we have a pretty solid program in the community with great kids, obviously, is we take our incoming freshmen, and we've always done this, is we push them into the JV division. So you don't need to get confused on that. You will be playing on Saturdays. All incoming freshmen will play on Saturdays. They will just be playing against other schools' JVs. And that ramps up the competition a little bit for us. And so you'll be playing either at 10 a.m. on Saturday or at 12:30. Typically games are 10 innings or they are 2.5 hours. And games will be played at the senior high school on the turf field, and potentially could be played on the high school field at Whitechapel, which is the 9th and 10th grade campus. But we're going to do everything we possibly can. There shouldn't be any conflict to be able to play.
What other teams will be a part of that league that we'll probably travel to, I guess, on some of the games, right? Or will they all be played here?
So it's 6 weeks, so it's 6 consecutive weeks on Saturdays, either at 10 a.m. or at 12:30. And you only play one game. There are no practices involved in this, so it's just games. So potentially, if you've got a 10 o'clock game, what it would look like is you'd show up based on what the dad tells you, probably about a half hour before the game, 45 minutes, maybe hitting the cages a little bit, get some soft toss, get loosened up, and so forth, and start your game. And then when you're done, and you don't have practices, we'll see you again the next Saturday. Is what ends up happening. The dads coach the teams, and I'm not allowed to coach the teams. I am, by UIL rule, allowed to make the rosters. That is legal. But after that, they have to make them, so I don't control that. The only thing I tell the dads is to make sure that we don't kill arms and that we're smart about getting everybody who is paid, giving them even innings as best as we possibly can within the construct of the number of kids. And a lot of that has to do with how many is registered for each team.
Right, okay. So have you determined what you think they'll be? You think there'll be 2 teams?
Yeah, right now, based on what I know from the fall signups for fall class, and then we don't turn anybody away in the fall. Anybody can play in the fall league. So there, you don't have to be cut or try out for a team to play in the fall league on Saturdays. You are in if you want. If you pay your registration fee, you're in. We'll find a team for you to play, and then we're going to try to get you to play as many positions as you feel like you have a chance to make in January.
What if your son plays football? Obviously, he's not going to play
Right.
football on Saturday. Is there any rules against them coming over and playing?
No, there's no rule, and Coach Dodge and I are pretty tight. We have our meetings to discuss things like this, and the only issue would be is if there's a freshman football player that's also a baseball player, if he is a tweener or double dips, they call it, and does varsity, dresses out only on Friday nights, but plays freshman or JV football on whatever nights they play. I don't know if it's Wednesdays or Thursdays or when they play exactly, but they are not going to be allowed to play if they're double dippers.
Right.
If they just play freshman or JV football, then we encourage them. They are allowed to be able to go ahead and play fall baseball. Now that is up to them. They don't have to. We're not going to cut them because they don't play fall baseball. They may have a lot on their plate, tired, injured, sore, whatever, or they just had a tough summer, played a lot of games in the summer, and just say, hey, listen, I saw you in summer camp. I saw you in this and this. I'm not going to play in the fall because I'm going football, going strong in football or basketball, whatever it happens to be. And then we'll see you in January. And that's completely fine.
And the teams that is it just local teams? Will the team travel very far?
Yeah, they could. I mean, it's not. I don't think it'll be far. I mean, I don't know the number of teams that are in it. I know the number. There's like 32 different high schools that are involved in this league. We typically, Doug has a working relationship with him that he'll keep them fairly close. So if it's 6 weeks, you can bet they're going to play 3 games at home and they're going to play 3 on the road. And that could be Birdville, it could be Arlington Martin High School, it could be potentially Highland Park, which is quite a drive, as you know. It could be Frisco Schools, which is down off 121 in the toll road. So, I mean, it could be. But most of the time, he does a pretty good job of putting us at Grapevine, Keller Central, Birdville, Trinity, Richland, these kind of schools.
The question that I've gotten personally by a couple of dads is, will you and the other coaches be present at those games to evaluate, check the guys out?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we have to now. We won't be able because we typically, they love us because we put close to 10 teams in. This year it looks like we'll have 8 teams in if it goes the way that based on the numbers we had for camps and that's why the camps are important and summer ball and so forth. So that's kind of what we're looking at is yeah, it's important. We'll be there as much as we possibly can. Now, there'll be a coach. If I'm not there, it's because I'm at a different site. And the other coach will be over there. He'll be at the different site, take notes, and we communicate about and evaluate assessment over the 6 games.
And the last thing about the fall league, when will you announce the dad coaches for those teams that you're going to have?
Yeah, as soon as the registration hits its deadline and we're able to put those rosters together, I'll check off kind of what I have a template of the guys that I think based on, we just kind of mixed them up based on what I knew from camps and pitchers and catchers and so forth, like I said. And then we'll scratch some off. We'll add some potentially that are on there. I know we have about 6 move-ins that parents have contacted me as well that are incoming freshmen, which is quite a lot. And so I haven't seen them, but I've got them on the list. And so we'll look at it, and then we'll post that very quickly within a day or two. So by the end of the 21st or the 22nd for sure.
Perfect, good. And before I go to the next slide, what I want to share with all of you is that if you have questions, we're going to do Q&A at the very end. And I think we'll answer the vast majority of your questions as we go through this webinar. But if you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, all you got to do is where you see the GoToWebinar control panel off to the right of your screen, there's a question box. All you got to do is just type in your question, hit enter, and then we'll get to those at the end, okay? So let's talk about next the freshman class, the fall. Tell us kind of what the freshman class is all about. What's the typical day in the baseball class look like? I mean, are we in the fall working out, running, and lifting weights, and then in the spring it changes, or is it fielding, pitching, hitting? What are we doing? What are they doing in the fall?
Yeah, we try to limit it's baseball oriented, so it's about skill development in fall baseball. That's the emphasis, and that's been kind of a little bit of our secret sauce is we spend a lot of time with skill development. And so we don't spend a ton of time with weights and conditioning. The conditioning they get will be integrated into the base running and whatever they're doing from a baseball skill standpoint. But no, we're developing skills, whether it's defensive skills, fundamentals, or whether we're working on hitting, whatever it happens to be. pitching, catching, those kind of things. And so everything is baseball oriented. And so that the weightlifting and the conditioning will take place. And that's another issue is with performance course will be an 8-week course to sign up, and that will take place after school at the high school on Whitechapel, where they already are. They're encouraged to do that. That will take place from 3:45 till 5 p.m. That's weightlifting and conditioning. And the first couple of weeks is just based on fundamentals with no weights on how to properly lift. And obviously performance course is part of the dragon culture, has been for a long, long time. And so every program works with performance course in some way, shape, or form. And that's a separate entity. And so we'll get that information out very quickly as well.
I know it's strongly encouraged to do that. Is that required?
No, it's not required. It is not required. Obviously, if they have their own agenda, they have their own workout partners, and they have their own situation. The only thing we like with performance course is that when they all work together, then they're achieving goals, camaraderie. We like that, encourage that, but we definitely do not require that. But we're gonna recommend that.
Now, Coach, what about tryouts? There's a tryout for the fall class as well, right?
Yeah, there is. The tryout for the fall class, and this is for the fall class, will take place with the first day. So here's kind of what the day, and I think your question kind of alluded to that. What will it look like every day? Well, the very first day that they show up on Monday, which will be very soon,
5 days
from now, we're excited to see these freshmen. They show up. We'll see them over at the high school. And what will end up happening that first day is they will be bussed over. And so the big thing is that Coach O'Neill will be there at 7:30 a.m. every day throughout the fall, and he'll even do that in the spring. He's consistently there. He is their teacher of record, their coach of record is Coach Philip O'Neill. And so he's there at 7:30 every morning. He'll open up the building, which is the wrestling building across from the high school baseball field at Carroll High School. And there's a locker room in there that they'll go into, be able to dress if they haven't dressed yet, put their bags in the lockers, and then they'll make their way into the dorm, which is the classroom right next to the locker room across from the weight room. And they'll figure that out the first day, but they'll go in there and they'll sit and wait until a coach addresses them. Now, if they are coming, because it won't be every day, but the first day for sure, they'll get on a bus and they will travel over to the senior high. And Coach O'Neill will drive them over, shuttle them over to the senior high. And the first day, they don't need to dress out. So Monday, they do not need to dress out. They just need to be in their school clothes. And then they'll go through an orientation with myself, Coach Whiteley, Coach Sellers, Coach O'Neill, and Coach Cole. There's 5 of us there. And so we will go through an orientation at the senior high, and Coach O'Neill will guide them where they go when they get off the bus. And when they're done with the orientation day 1, they'll get back on the bus with Coach O'Neill. He'll drive them back in time to be able to transition into second block on that A day, Monday. Typical day, typically, we'll give them all the information that day in the classroom, but I can kind of tell you what's going to happen. Day 2, which is Tuesday, it's important that they have, and one of the things we're going to check on and we're going to do on Sunday before we see them on Monday is that they have their physicals completed, because they can't work out if they don't have three things done. They have to have their actual physical signed by a medical doctor and turned in to one of the trainers, whether it's Coach Fisher over at the senior high, whether it's Coach Adam Kokenzie, who's the head trainer, and he's stationed over at the high school on Whitechapel, or those 2 guys, they can get that in, and then they got to go to rank 1. And rank 1, they have their accounts, and I think most kids in this community are used to that, but they go under rank 1, and the parents have to fill out those 2 forms and make sure they upload those forms and get those completed. And then, so that's 3 things they have to have completed in order to be able to officially work out the next day. If they don't get those completed, we can't work them out. They have to have all 3 completed. Again, the physical and those 2 forms that they have to fill out uploaded to rank 1. The only thing that does not have to be uploaded is the actual physical from the doctor. That can be turned in to a trainer. If they would like to turn it in to me or to a coach, they can do that as well. Okay.
So let's break that down real quick, because I'm sure there's going to be questions about that. So you had mentioned that it has to be turned into a trainer. How do we know where the trainers are? Will they be coming to us on the first day?
Yeah.
We just bring it first day.
They can bring it to a coach. They can bring it to a coach, and we can give it to them. Kokenzie's out there, and he's around. He's very visible. But they can give it to
them. And what about rank 1 is a website?
Yeah, it's a website. And most of these kids, most of the parents, if they've been in middle school athletics in any way, shape, or form, they know rank 1. You have your username and your password that you create on rank 1, and then you pick baseball. You go through the windows, and it's easy to follow and navigate through. and then you go up there and you make sure you upload your students' information, those 2 sheets. And those 2 sheets are available on Rank 1, and then you just have to go in and fill them out, make sure you submit them.
Got it. So Monday, don't show up in baseball gear.
No, do not show up in baseball gear.
Okay. Tuesday, yes, you're going to show up in full
baseball gear.
What should that look like?
Okay, so baseball gear every day is a pair of baseball socks, baseball pants, gray, white, anything. So we were talking about white pants with no pinstripes or anything like that on the side. They can wear any type of baseball pants for the fall baseball class. It doesn't have to be just plain white. We're talking about those fall league games.
Right.
So if they have an old pair of, they can be gray. I mean, obviously gray or white. We're not into the black pants. I mean, we're in high school ball now. But if they can bring those pants in and wear those to, they can wear their green or black belt. It doesn't matter every day what they wear. Green or black socks. And then they need their turf shoes, and it's best for them to also bring their spikes. So those are 2 things, 2 pairs of shoes that they're going to need constantly, and they can put them in their locker as well and keep them there. But they're going to need their turf shoes, and they're going to need their spikes with them, and then they'll be told every day, kind of, hey, listen, you're going to need your spikes today, or you're going to need your turfs. If they were on the high school field, the dirt field, they're going to wear their spikes. If they're on the turf field, they're going to wear their molded cleats or their turf shoes. And so that's kind of how that looks. And then any shirt that has dragons on it. It could be anything, any color, just as long as it's a dragon shirt. We don't want to see Carroll on the shirt or Colorado Heritage and these kind of things. so that happens, believe me. So if you could wear a green, black, gray, white dragon shirt, and again, they can also wear, we had the kids last year wear their fall league. Once they loved them so much, they started wearing them every day. So I got a little stinky at times, but
I'm sure.
Yeah, so they wear those, and then they'll wear that cap that they'll get, that trucker hat that we talked about. They'll have a hat. Most of the kids don't have a dragon hat unless it's the SD hat or their select hat or whatever it happens.
Will each player actually have their own locker for the season?
We hope so. Now, one of the things with the own locker situation is they moved us to 1st and 5th block. We've never been 1st and 5th block before. We've always had baseball 4th and 8th. This is the first year, so we're getting acclimated as well. So please be patient a little bit with us as well. So we are sharing the shower area. All freshmen and sophomores will always be on campus to have a locker, and they may have to double up based on, because wrestling's in there as well, and there just aren't enough lockers. And so the coaches will be in there to monitor, both the wrestling and the baseball coaches will be there to monitor constantly and make sure that everything's up, done right and so forth, and those kids get their shower and get transitioned. But they may have to double up lockers for a while until we can figure out a different plan and the school district comes up with a different plan, but that's where we're at.
And the gear that they're bringing, say, on Tuesday, they've got their bat bag, they've got their helmet and all the gloves. When they bring that, are they putting that in, they must be leaving that in the locker as they go to class? At the end of
They have access.
Yeah, they can come back in and get it if they're going to hit or
whatever. Yeah, they can leave it in that locker, which is a good thing. They don't need to be lugging it around to classes the rest of the day. So at 3:21 when the bell rings, or 3:45 when they're done with their tutoring or whatever's going on with the class, they can make their way back to the locker room that's open. They can get in there and they can access it and then take their bag out and their towel. And obviously, mom doesn't want a molded towel.
Yeah.
And these kind of things, and so that's how it'll work. But they do need to bring their toiletry kit. We don't provide toiletry.
This isn't the Four Seasons.
No, this isn't the Four Seasons. So they're going to have to bring their own stuff.
Now, what about the times that they're going to go over to senior high? You're saying that every single time they should always meet at the high school. Never have the parents drop them at the senior high. Always going to bus them, right?
Yeah, we want to bus them over there so we can control kind of that situation, and that's the freshman and the sophomore. So Coach O'Neill, like I said, is always there at 7:30. You don't have to drop them off at 7:30, but the bus will leave at 7:45. So if you're driving in with your son and it's set and the bus has already left, you have one of 2 options. You miss practice and you tell them go to the library and you're just going to miss it today, which is not a good thing, obviously. Or you drive them to the senior high to join us. And then we'll have a conversation with him. Obviously, things happen and there might be an emergency or somebody just runs late. I mean, it's not the end of the world. But obviously, we want them to be there by 7:45. That the bus leaves at 7:45.
Sharp. 7:45.
O'Neill drives out because we start at 8 o'clock, right on the time, and so they need to be ready to go at 8 o'clock.
Now, for all the players that are playing football in the fall, and maybe they're not going to do the spring or the fall league, or they're not going to obviously be in the class, what do you recommend at kind of a minimum that they're doing to stay in baseball shape?
Well, football is going to. that's a beautiful thing about them playing football is they're going to get a different type of competition, different type of muscle movement, and different type of coaching, which we totally encourage, and I think it's a great thing. If they could get out, and I think the big thing, and we're going to talk about this, is arm care and timing. Those are the two things that you need to work on. Timing with the bat, obviously, is to get some pitches on Sundays every now and then to get back, and then don't completely lose your timing. Obviously, football is a priority, but if you can slip away on a Sunday and you're not dead tired and get some cuts in the D-bat or wherever it is that you go with your dad, that's highly encouraged. And the second thing is to take care of the arm so that when you do get ready to really ramp it up when football's done, that you have built up that plasticity in that arm and the arm's ready to go. That's not completely going cold, but you got those layers in that onion and that shoulder strong and ready to go.
Yeah, we're going to talk about arm care in just a minute too, right? So let's talk about the spring tryouts. When are the spring tryouts officially, and walk us through and how that actually works?
Spring tryouts will be January 13th through the 15th, and they'll occur during 1st and 5th block, which is 8 a.m. to 9:15, and they will all take place at the senior high. We will also, just so you know, we'll have, if we have them in the fall class, let's just talk about the kids that are in the fall class. We have a tryout.
But you have how many roughly?
We've got 21, I think, signed up for the fall class, but that doesn't mean that they will be in the fall class because we haven't talked yet about that. There's a fall class tryout.
Yeah, we started talking about that.
Right. So the fall class tryout, they're going to start Monday with an orientation, and really what we're going to talk to them about is what the tryout looks like. Okay. And so that'll happen Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We'll make a decision as a staff on Friday, and then we'll talk and communicate to those kids that, hey, listen, yes or no with the class. If you are a no with the class, then what we do is we submit your name to your counselor at Carroll High School, and then they will take you out of that class. And you will get another class, an elective, these kind of things, whatever it happens to be, or PE class, whatever it happens to be that you all choose together as a family. And then what we tell them is, hey, come back out in January, and we'll look at you in January. Last year we had 57 kids and freshmen only in 1st and 5th block. We got down to close to 29, 30. So that was quite a few. We don't have as many this year because a lot more of those kids play football.
Right.
We noticed that at the very beginning in summer camps. And so we expect thoroughly to keep most of them. I don't see, unless there's just a reason not to, based on skill development and so forth. But they could, there's a possibility they could be cut the first week of fall class and then told, hey, listen, keep playing on the fall league, because that's how you're going to develop. Yeah. And we're not going to say no to that. We want you to play fall league on Saturdays and then come back out in January on the 13th to the 15th to try out.
So everyone will know by this next Friday if they've made the team.
Yeah, a week from Friday.
Like after that class.
After that class, we'll communicate, or I'll send communication either through Remind, and I'll try to do that individually so not everybody sees that if it happens to be. So David Johnson, whoever David Johnson is a kid that we decided is not ready for the fall league, for the fall class, then I'll communicate directly with him and have a conversation, try to get over to communicate with him at 3:30, make my way over to Carroll High School and tell him in person, hey, listen, this is where we're moving forward with, and it doesn't mean you say where it's no, it just means not right now. And so here's why, here's what you can work on, and let's go get better and come on back.
Okay. So for the players that are in that class, near the end of that class, at the end of the fall, you probably have a pretty good idea if they're going to make one of the 5 teams at that point, right?
Yeah, I do, because freshman football ends, in October and so forth. And now with 1st and 5th, us being linear with football, which we haven't been in the past, 1st and 5th, we'll get a lot of those kids as soon as football is done and they turn in equipment. A lot of those guys will start getting acclimated to baseball, and we'll have a real good idea with the kids that are in the class, with the football kids. The only ones we won't know about until much later are the basketball kids and the wrestlers.
Okay. So the tryout is interesting because the school starts back up January 8th. Tryouts don't officially start till that following Monday,
13th.
Which is the 13th. So what's happening during that?
Well,
4 or 5
sure.
days?
Well, they're getting a chance basically to get themselves prepared. They'll go through a simulated tryout and on their own. It's basically what the coach is basically taking them through that, allow them to go through and get acclimated to that, so it's not a shock value when they do it on the 13th. And so we'll take them through what we're looking for, what the objectives are, and get them ready for it. And also their arms are coming off Christmas break, and hopefully they've thrown over Christmas break. If they haven't, then this is a good time for them to get ready and get their timing in as they're hitting as well.
what can the players expect in that tryout in
Well,
January?
they're going to get all the metrics that are normal. They're going to get the 60 time, which is big, not 40, but 60 time for 60. Baseball. We do some shuttle stuff to see agility and quickness and strength of the change of movement and directions. And then we do a lot of the basic stuff with regard to the normal stuff with regard to baseball skill objectives. And so ground balls and range and arm strength and what kind of ability you have to work downhill on a slow roller if you're an infielder, outfielder's range and the ability to transfer and hit your cutoff man. Obviously the hitting speaks for itself, solid contact, squaring pitches up, and then the ability to hit off speed pitches as well. What does it look like when you get something with a wrinkle in it? Those kind of things.
So obviously these are no secrets in terms of the skills and agility, those drills that you're doing. So I'm sure in the first week or so, everybody know, all the players know this is what we're going to evaluate you on. So there's no mystery.
There's no mystery, and also then what happens is in the class they get to work on those skills.
Right.
They're going to know through the entire fall. That's the beauty of having a fall class, which we haven't had until last year.
Yeah.
Is now we can go to work and say, hey, yeah, you made the class. Here's what we got to work on for the spring, and get yourself prepared. And so then we go to work on that.
So how do you and the other coaches, determine? You got 5 teams. How do they get broken up? I know there's always this question of, there's an A team and a B team, or is it level? We're talking about freshman class. How do you guys determine that?
Okay, with the lower levels, we have 4 lower level teams. We typically 2 years ago we had 107 kids in the program. We had 102 last year. That's a lot of kids for a high school baseball program, and so. We do have 2 facilities, and we have even a greater facility now. But what we do is we take anywhere between 15 and 17 kids. So we have 2 freshman teams, which we call the red and yellow, and then we have 2 JV teams, which is black and green, and then obviously the varsity team. We'll keep anywhere between 26 and 30 on the varsity, and we'll keep anywhere between 15 and 17 on each of the JV teams, and the same on the freshmen. Okay, and then we may add a couple. That's not even counting potentially where we have some practice players. We say, hey, listen, you're not quite ready to go with regard to getting a jersey and being on the team, but we're going to keep you on as a manager / practice player. And yeah, that does mean what you think it does. It means setup, but also you have a chance when you're done with setup. You may not be directly involved in specific drills, but you can still stay in the program, hit, and do different things at times when on your own in the cages with the tees and so forth. And so that gives them a chance to kind of get better from that. So those are the kind of players, that's how many we're talking about in the program. So that's right. Quite a few kids. Now, right now we're facing a challenge, to be honest with you, is that we're facing a challenge with some of our neighborhood schools are cutting teams. They're not adding. And so the problem with finding opponents is something that could throw a wrench into this whole equation. We're going to do everything we can to hold on to the 5 teams. We think that's part of our secret sauce, but there is definitely a potential that we could get down to 4, and hopefully they don't make us get down to 3. But right now, if Keller and Grapevine and some of these other schools that are in the surrounding area aren't going to field more than 3 teams, we just don't have any opponents potentially. So we're hoping that gets fixed and taken care of.
When will you know that?
That should be pretty quick. I mean, we should know in the next couple of weeks.
Okay. Yeah. Well, the last many years been a challenge, right? Because all the other programs have had 3 or 4. They've never had 5. And
right.
I know I've talked to you about this. It's been a real nightmare to schedule games.
It is, yeah.
And then if they lose a team in Keller or wherever they are, that even makes it more challenging.
Yeah, it really does. And we don't weight the teams. Our freshman teams are not weighted. And I think that was kind of where your question was going to. We have the 2 freshman teams like your level that you're interested in right now, the audience I'm talking to. Well, if we keep 15 or 17 kids on each freshman team, we don't weight them. We don't say, okay, we have all the top 17 and based on our evaluation assessment on one team and the other 15 and 17 play on this team. We basically go draft. We take the top player here, we put him on the red, and we take the second best player, put him on the yellow, and then we just keep going like that. And so we try to even them up as best as we possibly can. Now,
let's address that real quick, because every year for the last 3 years, I'll talk to a dad and I'll ask them, because my son's 8th grade going into 9th. Grant, and so he's on the B team, he's on the A team. So in their own mind, they really do think that there's an A and a B team.
We've been conditioned to that. I think football does it.
Volleyball does it.
Volleyball and basketball in the middle schools at Dawson and Carroll. So and it can sometimes it can appear that way, and it's not even. I mean, we don't see them all the time, and so we don't have a real good. We do have them on tryouts and so forth, but sometimes we miss or or they just don't perform, or you have some injuries, or you have some academic, or whatever it happens to be, where one team kind of takes off a little bit more and it kind of gives that appearance. But that was not by design, I promise you.
Right. Okay, so here's a question I know parents are asking, and we're getting a couple questions coming in, and we'll just start answering those in a minute. But what does it take for a freshman to make JV, and what does it take? This is very unusual. Griffin Aaron did it last year, and I think 9 years ago you had Leaper did it. I mean, it's very rare, but can you just kind of high level, walk us through what does it take to get your freshman son on a JV or varsity level?
Well, I think the big thing is obviously is talent and ability, and not just physical ability, but emotional and mental maturity and so forth is a big part of that. How they handle adversity. You're going to face more adversity than you've ever faced, obviously, at the high school, at the varsity level, especially the level of competition we play, the tournaments we go to. Obviously, we want to play the best, and everybody wants to. We have a target on our back, obviously. So to make that team, Griffin did make it last year. He was incredible. He's got obviously a great arm and so forth, but he's also a really good hitter and outfielder, and he can play some first base as well. So he's an incredible talent. And so he played football. So we had known about him in summer camps and so forth, but he played football, and then he came back out like we thought in the spring, and he just unleashed. I mean, he was 84 to 85 with a good breaking ball, and he handled the adversity. Our kids hit him a little bit, and then he was able to handle it and get right back in there, and that showed me that he can handle it. Well, he one of the questions we had with him was, okay, we like you as a pitcher, but are you good with being a PO as a freshman? Because you're not going to play first outfield with varsity. There's guys ahead of you that are a little more mature, and obviously at that point we're further ahead. And and he was great. And so that's what it kind of takes. Obviously he's an incredible talent, but again, I just want to state this clearly. We've had two guys in 11 years that have played, and even before that, there aren't many going back to the Hughes era and so forth, I guarantee you. So it's difficult in a program like this for a freshman to do that. Now, JV, we have them all the time. We have 4 or 5 guys that will play up on the JV potentially. Some years it's 2, some years it's 1, sometimes it's 8. You just don't know. It's just based on the level. And so we have a very strong sophomore class that were freshmen last year. So, you look at the class that's above you and say, well, are there spots open for that? Right. And so we're definitely open for that. But here's what will clarify a lot of that is that our philosophy as a program is we don't play the best players at the level that they can play at. And so we don't discriminate against age. And that's more for us. If a freshman can do it, we feel they have the skill set to do it, and those maturity factors, those intangibles, then we're not going to hesitate to give them an opportunity. Then it's up to them to procure that opportunity and be able to continue on with that. And then if we feel like we need to make an adjustment and play them on the JV if they made the varsity, then we'll do that. But we're going to play the best players in this program. There's not a senior thing where they're juniors and now all of a sudden, just because they're seniors, they're going to play. That's not the case. Right? It may work out that way, but that's not behind the philosophy. That's just because we felt that kid was better.
Would there ever be a scenario where you started on one of the freshman teams and you get bumped up mid-season to JV, or are you kind of on that freshman team throughout the season?
No, I'll give you another freshman made it last year. He's got a state championship ring. People forget about him. You use Griffin Aaron, but last year, that goes to your point, we had some catching issues. Luis Ortiz was our starting catcher, and he had a hamstring strain, and we had to bring in another really good player for us who also started in other positions. He's a versatile player, but we put him back behind the plate. He was our incredible player for us, and Thomas Rare, and he goes back and solidifies the dish for us, and we had to have a backup and a couple others. And so he wasn't going to come in because we felt we had a third guy good too to be able to do it, and a couple guys actually that could do it, but we needed the backup to the backups. And so you don't know with catchers what could happen, and so we called up a freshman who just at that time, we had a couple on the JV, one specifically that was nursing an injury with his arm, and who we would have promoted, but he was hurt. And so we went with a freshman in Clark Springs, and Clark Springs comes up and gets all that experience, and halfway through district, I believe, and then makes the run through the playoffs, went through every practice, and he sized for a ring the other day. So, so that can happen.
Hey, so tell me this, and I know we're getting into a lot of cool topics here, but everybody that's on this call comes from a different background of baseball, and it's coming from a club team, a select team, rec, whatever. And all those coaches that their son played for had a different philosophy on, hey, my son's not playing the position that I want him to. He's not getting the playing time. He's not in the right lineup. And this is something I dealt with as a coach, obviously, a long time dealing with the same issue. What is your philosophy? Is it working only through the player to have those conversations? Do you ever want to talk to a parent about playing time, lineups, all these kinds of things?
I tell the parents all the time when we do our parent meetings in the spring that, coaches love to come out and say, we're not talking about it. We're not talking about playing time. You and I both know every parent, if I have a parent conference, it might start about something, but it's going to end up going that way. And so to sit there and say, well, I'm just going to cut off the conversation now, there's going to be conversations about that. That's just normal. Parents want to know kind of where their kids are stand and so forth. And it's just there's a way to do it. There's a time to do it, obviously. And I think parents here do a great job for the most part of that. But
you shouldn't do it right after the game.
Yeah, probably not. Win or lose, and definitely don't text me, these kind of things. But I think that the playing time situation, really, it's versatility. We'll make those decisions. We'll have conversations with the kids. And one of our golden rules is I usually don't talk to parents. If I get a phone call, I'll say, well, has your son talked to me about this first? If the son hasn't talked to me about it, then I'll probably tell the parent, hey, listen, why don't you have him come talk to me, and we'll have a conversation. I'm pretty approachable. I'm not perfect by any means, but I'll talk to him and have a conversation with him. And then if that's not solved or resolved the way that they want it done, then I'll have a conversation with the parent.
Okay, good. I just thought I would address that because I know that's going to come up. It always does every year, every team. Let's talk next about the freshman class in the spring. So we have a lot of football guys in the freshman class, right? They're going to be hardcore in the football. You've played football. You're switching gears back over to baseball. You're getting into the baseball class maybe even later, October, November. Is it easy as just signing up? I mean, because I know it's the first and the fifth block, but I guess I just want to be clear. What's determining if you're in that class is the tryout in January.
Yeah, it's
right. Same thing that happened in the spring or the fall could happen in the spring, where you have to go get a class if you don't make the team.
Well, they're already in you're talking about football guys, though, right?
Football going to baseball.
Well, the class is the same. So it's first and fifth. So they don't want to have to go to the counselors to really adjust. They'll just go back to football, I would assume, unless they're quitting football, which I don't know.
True, yeah. Good
But
point.
they'll just jump back into football and go through Dragon Maker with Coach Dodge and the boys and get conditioned and go through the weight room and so forth. We'll give them that communication. But, it's a quick and easy transition. It hasn't always been that way. This is the first year in which we have a true linear move over. Usually we'd have to have them change their classes to try out, and then if they didn't make it, change their classes back, which caused all sorts of problems with the counselors and parents. And so this is a better situation, we think.
So a couple questions about the spring is one of them is the fall practices. Will they be similar, or how different will they be in the spring?
Well, yeah, the spring, I'm a lot more engaged with the freshmen, quite honestly, in the fall. There's no doubt. The spring, they will have their coaches. Now, I say that this year's a little bit different, like I said, because we'll be able to see the freshmen in the JV. And so typically the freshmen, if the weather is good, but remember, this is January and February.
Yeah,
first thing in the morning. Right, and so it's cold. So we're not going to throw out our arms in 38-degree temperature on a dewy field in January and February. So we do have an indoor facility now that's baseball oriented. So we'll probably bust them over on those days. If we get a good day and we got a good situation, then we'll get them out on the field at the high school. And then if they're at the senior high, I will see them. If they're at the high school, working with Coach O'Neill, Coach Cole, Coach Sellers, whoever that happens to be, and one of our new freshman football coaches that will be doing baseball as well, then they'll be I won't get to see them as much. But when they come over, and we'll do this from time to time, we'll bring them over the bus, and I'll be able to work with them.
How do you determine when the freshmen will be over at the senior high?
It's weekly, and sometimes it's daily. It's the night before we send a remind, because it just depends on the weather. We don't know what's going to happen with regard to weather. We have to make changes. If we get rain, if we get thunder, if we're under lightning, that could happen also after your kids are dropped off at the high school at 7:40 or something, and then I tell Coach O'Neill, hey, we're in. I get the text from the trainer saying you can't be outside, Coach.
Yeah, right.
And everybody wants the weight room because nobody can be outside. So football is going to get in the weight room, and wrestling is going to be in the wrestling room. Basketball is going to be in the gymnasium, and so we're scrambling. But now we have an indoor, and that was always a problem with baseball. So what we'll do is we'll tell O'Neill, put him on the bus, bring him over. So we'll get him in there, and we'll get some work done in the cages, in the indoor, and if the weather lightens up, then we'll get him outside on the turf.
Good. And then will there be practices in the spring after school?
Yeah, there could be. There could be. We're going to try. We just had a meeting today with our coaching staff about that. That was one of the questions from the coaches. How are we going to work this? And remember, girls sports are 4th and 8th, so they're going to have complete run of that. That's why we're 1st and 5th. So we're going to do our very best to get the freshmen and the JV completed, those JVs and freshman teams done in the period. So we'll bring them in earlier in the spring. So they'll be about 7:30, and then they'll still be released about 9:15, 9:20, and they're done for the day with baseball. But there are times when we don't get the work in, or there's bad fields, or whatever the weather, or whatever it happens to be, where we'll tell them, hey, listen, we need you to come back. But remember, they're going to play 2 games a week. And so now that might be just 1 game during the weekday, 1 game on Saturday, whatever happens. There's a potential they could play 3 games a week, but for the most part, it's 2, and 1 through Monday through Friday, and so they'll have 3 or 4 days of practice.
Let's talk about that real quick before we get into arm care and then wrap up with some Q&A. And by the way, there's still only a couple of questions up here. If you have questions, just type them into the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel. When will the games start in the spring, and what do you think about the schedule? When do you think that schedule will be made available?
Okay, so the first day of official practice, UIL practice, that we can go past the period is January 31st, which is that Friday. So on January 31st, we'll already know the rosters and so forth, and we'll go past the normal hour and 10 minutes that we're allotted, or really it's an hour. And so when we get in the spring, we have 2-hour practices, or hour 45-minute practice, whatever it happens to be. And that'll be January 31st. And then from there, we'll transition into the Saturday inter squad. Then the very next week, we have a full week of practice, and another inter squad, or not inter squad, but scrimmages begin with Arlington Martin. So they'll play 3 to 4 scrimmages, and then in February, middle to late February, I think it's the 18th, 19th, or 20th, they'll play their first tournament. They'll play in 3 tournaments, and then they'll play anywhere between 14 and 17 games.
Great, good deal. And what days?
Okay, freshmen play on Monday. They'll play district games if they're we split the district. So if we're playing Keller on Monday and Saturdays, which is when the freshmen would play, then the red team may play Keller on Monday, and then the yellow team would play them on Saturday. So that means that we've got to find yellow and red extra games to be able to play. That could happen on a Wednesday, or that could happen on a doubleheader at 1 o'clock on Saturday.
Got it. Okay. As I said in the very beginning, I had met you many years ago at an arm care clinic, and really kind of really liked what you were doing and adopted that for my team. We've been doing it ever since. And I'm a big believer. You're a student of the game. You go to a lot of the Texas baseball ranch. You do a drive line, and so arm care is really important to you. It's kind of your passion, it seems. You've got 100 and something guys in this program. What should the guys that are starting as freshmen expect to see when it comes to arm care from the program?
Well, I think a big thing is we have bands, but if they don't have a pair of Jaeger bands, they need to invest in a pair of Jaeger bands.
$35.
Yeah, $35. It's spelled JAEGER, Jaeger.com, and you can find the bands there. And it's with a hook, and 2 bands come off with cuffs, the cuffs obviously. So we do a lot of band work to prep the arms, so they don't just run out and pick up a baseball. They're going to do a lot of their wake up, warm up to heat up the body, get it prepared to go, and then they'll do their bands. And then we'll have them, based on that, we'll select and start identifying certain programs and protocols that they'll need. Like, for example, we call them IPPs, which are individual pitcher programs, but they're really individual player programs. So you have a guy that maybe needs some work with regard to the velocity or strength to throw harder, then we'll put him on a overload, underload, but that's all based on each individual. Some kids their overload might be, if a baseball is 5 ounces, it might be 6 ounces. There's another kid who's been doing it for a couple of years, is stronger, then his overload might be 9 to 10 to 12 ounces. It just depends. So we have to really look at that kid and what their capacity is and what they can handle, what kind of shape they're in. And so they'll go through all that, and then we'll determine, man, if the kid's got command problems, it's very simple here to us. It's not as complex as you think. If they've got command issues, arm side command or glove side command issues, then they need to get on a 10-inch mound. They need to throw probably twice a week to be able, and we can limit their pitches, obviously, and their intensity at which they're throwing those pitches, but they need to work off of the mound to get comfortable throwing off the mound, off that incline, and work their command, whether it's a 2-seam or 4-seam fastball, whatever it happens to be. If it's an issue with velocity, they just don't have the arm strength, then we'll put them on a weighted ball underload, overload training protocol, where we monitor that very closely. And and then we try to radar them and get them up. And we do some other stuff with regard to our wall ball routine and protocol, where it doesn't involve necessarily throwing heavy ball. One of the things this does not do with overload, we do not have them throw a heavy ball from a long distance. So I don't want anybody to be concerned about that. I mean, we're not going to sit there and have them throw long toss with a 7, 8, 9, 10-ounce baseball.
Right.
That's not happening. So they're close proximities, and it's closely monitored by our pitching coach with Coach Whiteley and myself. And so, we just have to identify them. So if Tim Wright's got that velocity issue, we're going to try to raise his velocity and say, listen, we got to get you up from this to this. This is what our goal is. If the kid has a goal, then we go out and work on it. If the kid throws hard but he has no command, then we get him on the mound. If a kid's got a flexibility issue, then we get him in yoga. So he'll spend part of the practice doing a lot of thoracic spine mobility stuff. And so that's kind of what we have to do, is identify each of the kids and what it is. But arm care is a big part of it. I ruined a kid early on. I believe I did my first year coaching. And, I got overzealous, and this kid was winning a lot of games. And at that time, it was about me, and it wasn't about them. And I just made a mistake and overdid it for him. And I felt like I hurt him. And I decided from there I was not going to do that, and I was going to get more educated. And that's kind of what led to this.
Yeah, it's really, you could spend a whole hour on arm care, which we won't. We need to wrap up this webinar, but there's a lot of kind of, I'd say, naive thinking in this area, it seems, when you talk to people that say, oh, you know what, long toss is bad, weighted balls are bad. They don't really have anything to go off of. They just know that, there's been baseball that's played for 200 years, and those guys didn't have it. It doesn't mean that it was bad. They just didn't have it. So that's kind of the traditionalists, I guess, come out in a lot of, moms and dads that really feel.
Yeah, I was a traditionalist too, and I was locked into that as well. But, science wins, right? And so if anything worth doing is worth measuring. Okay, so if you're measuring it and you have the science behind it, and the science tells us that we have to be smart and individualize and create these individual programs for these kids, but we have to be really smart and conscientious about what we're doing to these kids, what we're putting in their hands. And so the filming, some of the stuff that we do with film work to be able to identify constraints and different things that they have in their delivery will tell us and lead us to it. But really, the number one thing, just like everyone tells you, is if you the first question is pain. Do you have any pain when you throw? And then you ramp them up. Do you have pain when you throw this hard? Okay, or the next day. And then that kind of guides us into the next day, what we're doing. And then from there, we get used to them, and then we can set a program with them.
Yeah. Well, if you have to look no further than probably the beacon of all players that follow the protocol to the most extreme way, which is Trevor Bauer, MLB pitcher, obviously an all-star, and he's done some incredible things. And if you watch, he shows up 4 or 5 hours before a game and throws a ball.
Yeah, not everybody. That is extreme. I mean, I know Trevor, and Trevor's been going to the ranch for years now. He's a driveline guy as well. Trevor came out of UCLA. I don't know if you know that, but he went to UCLA, and then he was not with the Indians. Now he's with the Reds, but he didn't get drafted by the Indians. He got drafted by the Diamondbacks, and the Diamondbacks, even 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, were not buying into this driveline, heavy ball, long toss, extreme long toss program. And so that has really changed now. And it got to the point where they didn't want him to do it. He said, I'm doing it. And so they traded him. And now it's caught on. And so you got Brent Strom, who's the pitching coach for the Houston Astros the last 3 or 4 years, and I think they've been pretty successful. Yeah, he's an older guy who was a traditionalist, didn't believe in it either, but he's a Wohlforth disciple. And so now he's caught on. Wes Johnson, who was at Arkansas with one of our pitchers, Cole Ramage, left halfway through the year last year and was one of the few pitching coaches to go straight from college to the major league. He skipped the minor leagues, but he's a disciple of Wohlforth and the Texas Baseball Ranch and Driveline. And they're very similar. The differences are in quantitative aspects of that, but there's a lot of that there.
Well, good. Well, listen, it's been an hour. I thought we'd go 45. If you need to jump off, totally understand. There are a few questions that we wanted to stick around and answer for you, and then we'll just wrap up. If you have to leave, thanks so much for getting on the call. Get your son prepped for Monday. It's going to be a lot of fun coming up here. So let's go with Daniel. Dan, you have a question. How much time do we get, Coach, to shower and change once we get back to high school and if we're done with high school?
Yeah, we'll get them on the bus at 9:15 if they're at the senior high, or 9:20 if they're at the high school practicing. But most of the time they'll be at the senior high in the fall, and that's the freshmen and sophomores. At 9:15, that bus will leave. That'll get them there at 9:21, 9:22. They'll jump into the shower right away, get themselves transitioned. They have to be in first block, which is just across across the street where the drop-off is by 9:41.
9:41. All right, so you've got about a half an hour, it
Half an
seems
hour.
like. Okay. What helmet and cleats are used in the spring? That's from Jari.
Well, I mean, obviously, if they're on the turf, they can't wear metal spikes on the turf. So if they're playing fall league or they're practicing, that's why we told them to have their turf shoes, or molded spikes are okay if they're molded plastic, but they can't have steel spikes on the turf. So that's prohibited. So as far as helmets, they can wear any helmet. They don't have to be any brand.
Let's talk about colors, shoes, and
colors. Black, obviously, white are fine. Either is fine.
So you don't need dragon green?
No, they don't need dragon green, but if they have them, that's great. Just not red.
Okay. No red. Let's see. Doug, you have a question. Arm care question. What are your thoughts on a kid playing quarterback and throwing a lot of footballs with respect to pitching in the fall? Would you recommend doing both?
Yeah, absolutely, I would, because they're completely different weighted implements. So the football is a heavier implement. You don't see as many rotator cuff. You don't really see issues with quarterbacks having major issues. Every now and then some of them will pop up, but you don't see it. And a lot of that is the heavier the implement, the better the mechanics are of the throw. The front side stays closed a little longer. If you YouTube a football quarterback, you'll see that his front side stays closed. You almost see the left arm, if he's right-handed, stay closed over closer to his right shoulder, his throwing shoulder, and that's because the body, just biomechanically, is trying to adapt to the load that he's throwing with. And so it's almost a healthier throw to throw a heavier implement like that. And they throw a ton of balls, obviously. And so a lot of their injuries have to do with knees and things like that because they've been hit and so forth. It's not arm issues. Where you get into trouble, there's two things you get in trouble with, is the transition into the baseball, because you go down to a 5 ounce, which is a major distinction of underload to the overload of the football. And so there can be, if you're not doing your protocols and if you don't understand arm care and you're not taking care of your shoulder capsule and your rotator cuff and obviously your UCL and so forth, and doing the proper protocols, it could be a problem. And especially if you're in a situation where coach is abusing you and throwing you too much and he's not progressing you in once you're done in October, November with football, that he's not just throwing you into live inner squats right away, but he's putting you on a plan to allow you to progress at a mature rate to where until the coaches feel like, hey, you're ready to be able to throw 30 pitches at 100%.
Yeah, which will all be taken into consideration.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. For sure. Okay. Sean, you have a great question that we didn't even talk about, but what about those that are playing basketball in regard to tryouts, obviously a winter sport, the roster and the initial practices, because there's going to be some overlap.
Hey, the good thing about basketball this year and baseball, which we've never had, is this great relationship we have between Coach Dodge, Coach Eric McDade, the varsity basketball coach, and myself, is that if they're in basketball right now, they start Monday in basketball. And because the first sport prior to baseball, obviously, is basketball, right?
Yeah.
Well, we've never done this before, but we're doing it this year. So if you've got, I don't know, your son, if he's playing basketball, well, we'll alternate weeks if he wants to. It's up to the child and the parents to decide that. This is the first year we've been able to do that. So the first week, he'll go with basketball for the first week. The second week, he comes over to baseball. The third week, he goes, so just alternate, he'll go back to basketball. So we'll alternate the weeks until basketball officially starts. And I don't know the exact day that starts, sometime in October, early October, I think, mid. But whenever they start officially, then obviously no more baseball. They're in season. That is the priority. They're in basketball. And then when they're done and conclude and the coaches say, hey, you're released from basketball, we're done with the season, then they can start back up with baseball. And then they'll be completely in baseball.
And no pressure either one. The coaches on either one. Hey, you really want to go do that?
No, we're all in it now. Listen, to sit there and say that. I mean, but McDade, and he's
healthy grief.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But it's listen, McDade's a phenomenal person, but he's a great coach. So we've had these conversations. This is also coming down from our district office about sharing athletes and not pressuring kids. So there's a real emphasis on that, which is good. So I think if it's all up to the kid, right? And what the parents believe. Hey, can you handle this? And if a kid says, yeah, I'm a baseball player, but basketball's next, and that's what I'm going to focus on, then you don't have to choose the alternating weeks. I won't even know probably until I see you. Yeah. And so, I might see you and come talk to you in fall ball. If you signed up for fall baseball. Now, if I haven't seen you in camp and I haven't seen you in, the practices we did this summer, the hour practices or the league, and I don't see you in fall ball, I don't know who you are, and you're in basketball and I still don't know who you are, and you come out in the spring, then obviously if you're really good, then you're fine. But if you're kind of, it's going to take some time for me to get to know you a little bit and know what you can do over that time out of the trials and so forth. And we'll already have rosters solidified by the time you come out.
Right.
Pretty close. And we leave open those opportunities for kids from basketball. Every year we have 3 or 4 or 5 basketball players, so it's not new.
Now, what about the guy next Monday who is going to basketball, and on Tuesday for baseball, tryouts are Tuesday to Friday?
Yeah.
He's going to come the next week, so how does the trial
Well, here's what happens is we're still going to honor that, and we may extend him into the next week, because really he won't have to change his class, will he?
Yeah.
He won't have to. He'll just go into basketball. So
right.
the emphasis is on those who don't have a second sport, really. And we got to get that information to the counselor so they can fill that course for that
very quick.
But for him, it's not we can bleed into the second week and give him his 4 days that he needs. So that would be 2 the first week and 2 the second week.
Got it. Okay. This is our last question. It's coming in from David. Will Dragon equipment bags be available for purchase? If so, is there a monogram option? We're getting stylish.
That's awesome. No, we don't have them for the fall. We don't do them for fall baseball. So really in the spring, we don't give them bags. I mean, at the high school level, everything's taxpayer kind of situation and what we have with our budgets. But it works from the top down, so the varsity down to the JV and the freshman. Now, this year, because we moved into Adidas, we have to wear Adidas toe-to hat this year and everything in between. And so we're no longer Under Armour. Well, we just bought 3 brand new uniforms last year for Under Armour. We can't wear them.
Oh, wow.
The varsity can. Now, the JV lower levels can wear Under Armour. So they'll wear those down. So they're going to get some pretty good uniforms. And then the others will trickle down to the freshmen. So they'll be fine. But as far as bags, if you would like to buy a bag, David, you're welcome to do that on your own, but we don't issue bags. And say hi to Paula, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And so on the bags, because a lot of the guys coming from club have just been using backpack bags for years and years, got the 2 bats coming out the side. You see a lot of the high school players, especially varsity, none of them are using that. They're all
because they're big duffel bags.
Duffel bags. So do you recommend that for this year freshmen?
No, I think the lower levels they can wear those. The duffel bags are meant because we travel to California and we're traveling to Houston, or we're in the playoffs, we're on the road, and so that's much more feasible to have, and logistically just to have that kind of
travel
bag. And so no, but for the lower levels, they can still carry those bags. They want to buy those, and they can even put the insignia on if they want to, a logo.
Yeah, good deal. All right, well let's finish up here with just any final thoughts that you have, and we'll wrap it up again. Thanks for the questions, everybody, and we have we've gone over a little bit on time, right? So this has been recorded, so if you want it, we'll get it out to you tomorrow. But any closing thoughts before all these guys show up to the high school?
No, I just tell you we're excited to see them, and we're fired up, and the bus will be ready for them. And again, if you miss it, we'll get them on Remind right away. The coaches will get their information. So if there's an issue, you'll have our numbers the first day. Kids will write everything down so we can communicate better. It's going to take that first day. Again, they don't need to work out the first day gear. They just need to make sure their physicals are done. Everything's uploaded rank 1. And then that they're at the high school by 7:40ish, so they can get on that bus at 7:45 and come on over to the high school, to the senior high, and then we'll bus them over there back after the orientation.
Okay, good. Well, listen, if you didn't have your son listen to this, you're really bumming right now, right? Because you got, how do I relay all this information to my son? But listen, they're going to cover a lot of it next week, so don't worry. This is mainly for the parents, so you had a full scope of what was going on this next year. But Coach, good luck next year, and thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Take care.